If someone who has never heard of the Tuolumne asked you to describe it, what would you say?
Well, the Tuolumne, if there was a better place in the world for running rapids, I'd be there. I had the opportunity to go anywhere, and my compass lined me up with the stars to be on the Tuolumne, and I was fortunate to have a lot of time to go elsewhere. The Tuolumne is the best. There is nothing else that compares with these two sections of river for navigating. There's places that are as beautiful or more beautiful than the Tuolumne, but they don't have the granite-based rapids and rocks that produce whitewater that is so much fun. It's really the best.
So, what led you to the Tuolumne River?
Well, I was kayaking the rivers of California, and the Tuolumne became popular by the first run done in '69, and so I heard about that. Another friend and I went and kayaked it in '69 and was like, wow, this is the best. And then the guy I was working for, I was working commercial river trips on the Stanislaus and the Klamath and the Rogue River. And he started running the first business on the Tuolumne and hired me to lead his first trips at the young age of just, 19, 20 years old. So, but I was a tall guy and I was well suited for it. I really loved it a lot. So the Tuolumne was the best game in town back in the early '70s and still is now. And at 22, I ran the first trip on Cherry Creek Upper Tuolumne, which has been the gold standard for Class 5 whitewater boating pretty much worldwide. And there's just nothing beats the Tuolumne. There's a lot of forces on the planet, and gravity is one of the more interesting ones. The gravitational sports like skiing, rock climbing, and whitewater boating. The gravity is sort of a mysterious energy force. It's predictable. If you pour water over rocks, you'll make a little course. And then if you're kayaking or swimming or rafting in that environment, it's not just physically challenging, it's mentally challenging, and for me it's spiritual. That it's a holy place, that the gravitational forces of the planet have carved this course, and the river is the manifestation of that carving, and to navigate it is you're part of the creation of it, so to speak. Not only is it a sport, but it's also an environment that the riparian zone, the water itself is a habitat for fish and a lot of other creatures. I think I've heard it said, the river is the lifeblood of the wilderness. I don't think it was John Muir that said that, but there's a quote that sits on my desk. And so that being said, the Tuolumne is very important because it is the lifeblood of the Sierras, and it provides a navigational course that's unparalleled.
So you were one of the founding board members of the Tuolumne River Trust. What motivated you to get involved with the trust?
Well, when I was a kid, I read John Muir's book, Muir of the Mountains. And John Muir is an inspiration for me, and his battle to prevent Hetch Hetchy from being dammed was emotionally moving to me. And then when I became a boater myself, and the Tuolumne was threatened by 3 dams, it's sort of like picking up the fight where John Muir left off. And so it was truly an honor to walk in John Muir's footsteps, and being able to take the inspirations that I got from John Muir at a very young age. Like, I think I read his book when I was 11 or 12, and so it was almost sort of a righteous battle to pick up where he left off. And the trust was well situated to win that battle, which it did, and then carried on to be a steward of the watershed. So it's a really good organization.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What would you say has compelled you to stay involved?
Well, I was an activist in the '60s against the war in Vietnam, and then I was uh, moved that activist with the fight to save the Stanislaus River. It was being threatened by New Melones Dam, which ultimately the Stanislaus was lost. The Friends of the River was founded trying to fight that battle. I was one of the founding fathers of the Stanislaus movement. And it was like, well, the lessons learned from losing the Stanislaus could be applied to the Tuolumne. And so I was in it from the first day when the Tuolumne Trust was conceived with Jerry Merrill and a few others, Bob Hackermack, to form a coalition of different special interest groups.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it was one step at a time. It started with pieces and focusing on dams, and then slowly started to encompass more of the river and more of the watershed and more of the big picture of what it means to have a healthy
Mhm.
watershed.
Yeah, I think Peter Druckmeyer has done a fabulous job in the Bay Area doing school education. It's like, where does your water come from? Kids think, oh, it comes from the tap. Well, no, it comes from somewhere else. If you try to ask a young person where their water comes from, they can't really connect the dots. And I think it's, what river are you drinking? And what happens in that river? Is it cows standing in it, or is it a brewery dumping their wastewater into it upstream, like Coors? And so there's uh, I think there's a lot of naivete and assumptions in younger people that if you plug something in, it's going to work. Well, what does it take to make electricity come out of that plug? And I think that there's a lot of education that people should be giving to their kids, so that they have a more whole picture of how their food comes to their table, how their water gets there, how gas gets in their car. I mean, people have fought wars over food and fuel, and so you can't just take it for granted that it's all you just go to the grocery store and buy what you want. It's a team effort.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And I agree. I think that's a really unique component of Tuolumne River Trust, that they do have these different facets where it's the education component in the Bay Area and in Modesto, and then also the groundwork up in the Sierra Nevadas, and kind of trying to hit all those different arenas that are really important. Uh, and my last question for you is, what makes you proud to be a part of the Tuolumne River Trust?
I'd say go this almost back to the first questions. Is I'm quite proud to be walking in the footsteps of John Muir. Then I think uh, it is like a spiritual path for me personally. That I am I suppose when I was a little kid, I was a wannabe John Muir type person, but I know that's I'm not John Muir, but I know I feel the pain he had losing the battle with San Francisco, and I've read the research of how the campaign went, why San Francisco was so victorious over with. How can you build a dam in a national park? I mean, the Hetch Hetchy Valley is a virtual twin of Yosemite Valley. Can you imagine putting a dam upstream of El Portal and flooding Yosemite Valley? I mean, it's an iconic resource for the world to enjoy. And although Hetch Hetchy Valley is a beautiful place, but downstream of it is the Pupanaw Valley, and it is unbelievably rich in Miwok Native Americans who lived there. And if you hike the Pupanaw Valley below Hetch Hetchy, you get a feeling for what a glorious riparian zone that must have provided food and spiritual substance for the Native Americans that lived there. And so I'm quite honored to be with people who've been there a long time. The board and people who the is supported by a group of advisors. And the advisors for the Tuolumne Trust Board are a group of people with amazing experiences and resources that they add to the wealth of knowledge that the trust has. And I've been involved with Friends of the River from day one, and Friends of the River is a great organization, but their job is a much broader thing. They're trying to speak for all rivers of the world, whereas the Tuolumne Trust is focused on one watershed. It's a very clear agenda, and it's sustainable. It's when you know what the mission statement is, and they're very successful. They've been very successful. So, and they were successful at a time in 1984 when Ronald Reagan was president, and to get an environmental bill with Senator Cranston, to get that passed was a wilderness bill that expanded Death Valley, and a lot of wilderness went down to protection status, along with the Tuolumne River, for example, the Tuolumne Trust was responsible for turning San Francisco Board of Supervisors to be in favor of wild and scenic status designation, in spite of the fact that the San Francisco PUC had these dam projects proposed. So to have the governing body of San Francisco oppose their own project was amazing, and that was done through the hard work of the board lobbying. It was a unanimous vote of the Board of Supervisors to oppose or to support wild and scenic status.
Wow.
And in just a few months before the river was designated. So, it's a powerful train.
Yeah, no kidding. That's pretty wild. I don't think I knew that tidbit, but that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think those are all the questions I have for you. Do you think that we missed anything? I felt like that was pretty thorough.
Yeah, I think you're pretty thorough, Jenna. It would be better if we were having this interview at the Levy confluence.
I agree.